iPhone 6 having the highest failure rate among iPhones. We'll talk about exactly what that means. Your phone's unlimited data plan isn't really unlimited, and I don't think I'm telling you anything you didn't already know. We've pretty much gotten used to this, and the question is why, I think. Microsoft branded Android phone, that could be interesting. We've been wondering for quite a while if Microsoft is pretty much just out of the game when it comes to smartphones. And, bringing back Windows phones probably wouldn't be an easy task to accomplish, but there may be an alternative to that. But what does that really mean anyways? 2018 iPhones and 2 new iPads will get the notch, according to an article, or 3, so we'll look at those as well. The ZTE ban has been lifted. What does that mean for those of you in the US who are interested in ZTE products? And the Twitter bot has purged millions of accounts, and as we kind of knew, a lot of this stuff was coming from other parts in the world and influencing people's opinions and maybe even their votes. So it's probably a good thing overall. All right, let's talk tech. Hey, good to see you guys. Dave, Carl Letourneau, everyone else who is in the chat right now, welcome back. Today I'm going to start off with this right here, and we are looking at a study, and I'm going to use these words, or at least preface this with, take it for what it's worth, okay? And I have a few problems with this right out of the gate, okay? And the first one is this. We do know that it wouldn't be a stretch to imagine the iPhone 6 having the highest failure rate when it comes to performance, durability. There are a number of areas where we know that the iPhone 6, being a brand new form factor, had many challenges and had quite a few consistent problems from a lot of users. So that's a fair statement. But when we talk about responsible journalism, my question is always, especially given today's climate, how reliable is this information and where is it coming from? So I want to dig into this article a bit here, and they have their top 10 iOS failure rates by model. Now, when they say iOS failure rate, does that mean it's in the software? Well, not really, at least not from what I've read here. But I'm going to dig down a little bit here, and it says the state of mobile device repair and security, who uses a data erasure firm called Blanco. I hope that I'm pronouncing that correctly. That looks like an L, but it's got 2 C's. So I think it is Blanco. And what they're saying is that, a number of different problems have been going on with the iPhone 6, and they're calling the iPhone 6s part of the iPhone 6 line. So just basically the series of iPhone 6, 6 Plus, 6s, and 6s Plus included there. Recent software updates have adversely affected the iPhone 6's battery lifespan. I thought that was the iPhone 6s, but in either case, we know that that was an issue because they were trying to keep the phones from shutting down when the battery started to get low as the lifespan kind of diminished on these things. Now, here's the catch. In the article, they do say that according to their data, Samsung's overall failure rate was higher than the iPhone 6. So if you thought it was bad that iPhone 6, and let me back up here a second, the iPhone 6, 22% failure rate. Now, of course, the first question is, what does failure mean? Are they saying that the phone is no longer operable? Are they saying that there was one component or one feature that stopped functioning? They aren't really clear in this article about what that means. So again, take it for what it's worth. But assuming all other things are equal, if they're grading these phones based on what they determine as being a failure, whether it's component, software, some feature, whatever that is, they're saying that iPhone 6 for iPhones is at the top of the list with 22%. However, they show Samsung's overall failure rate at 27.4%, which obviously is even worse. And we're talking across the board on every Samsung device. And for those of us who work in phone repair, that is another thing that's, not too difficult to accept because we see so many funny things going on with Android in general. And when it comes to Samsung, we've had a number of problems with the cameras, with the battery, with, all sorts of different features. The report says that Bluetooth is the most likely performance issue to affect iOS devices, which is interesting, followed by Wi-Fi, headset, and mobile data. So, this doesn't sound like they're including things like touch disease or a number of other problems that we see consistently with iPhone 6 in particular. I'm sorry, let me back up here a second. And performance is the biggest problem for Android. So that one I kind of get. And it seems like no matter who you're working with, over time as you start to update your operating system, you're always going to see performance issues. So maybe this has to do with the fact that Android isn't specifically designed just for Samsung. They make Android, and then of course they've got to tweak it for all sorts of different manufacturers and handsets, different models, where Apple, you would think, really has an advantage in that they design their hardware and their software. So if anything's going to be consistent and reliable, it should be their products. But at the same time, nothing's perfect. We already know that. So I didn't want to give this article too much credibility. And again, I question, what exactly are they saying? Are they only including certain features? Because it's easy enough, if you look at anyone who's advocating for either Apple or Android operating system, it's easy enough to pick and choose the things that you think are important and then make your survey look like it favors one particular company or one particular operating system over the other. So I would really like to see a complete list here so that they could show us what it is exactly that they're talking about. And at the same time, let's think about this. The iPhone 6 has been out since what, 2014, 2013, 2014? So you would assume that any device that is, has been out there for 4, 5, 6, 7 years is going to have a failure rate that increases over time. And when they compare this, you look at the bottom of the list and they're saying that the iPhone 10 and the iPhone 8 Plus only have a 3% failure rate. Well, yeah, but they haven't even been out for a year yet. And we know that no matter what type of electronics you're looking at, pretty much no matter what type of product you're looking at, anything that is still within its warranty period tends to be reliable and, not be prone to failures until that warranty period is expired. So I really think it's unfair. This is definitely going to skew the results here to say that we're looking at an iPhone 6 that's several generations back and comparing that to something like the iPhone 10, which is the current flagship model. So, again, for what it's worth, but it does make sense to me that the iPhone 6 would kind of be at the top of this list. But now you notice they do have the iPhone 5S on here with only a 5% failure rate with it, which is interesting. However, how much of this has to do with that bendable frame problem? And that was the real issue with the iPhone 6, is that they launched a new form factor and they hadn't really thought through the durability on these things. They hadn't really, I would assume, stress test them to see how they perform in people's back pockets and being dropped and all sorts of other things. So that just kind of comes with the territory, and we should, as consumers, be wary of any brand new form factor that is untested. It's not an improvement over last year's model to correct the problems that one had. So, when you go to make your buying decision, these should certainly be things that we're thinking about. New MacBook Pro insanity. They are over the top with that one. Best to just accept that the failure rates are a feature and not a bug. Yeah, and nowadays I'm starting to wonder if a lot of people won't just embrace it and say, yes, that's the feature. It's designed to fail after a certain amount of time. Isn't that funny, Harvey? We see not just politicians, but oftentimes corporations saying that, if you can't fix it, feature it. So if your iPhone 6S battery is causing the phone to crash or slow down, that's just a built-in feature to tell you it's time to upgrade to a new one, right? I mean, just embrace your faults, I guess, is kind of become the motto around here. And I won't get into the politics. I promised I wouldn't do that, so I'm going to try to avoid that at all costs. All right, so next up, here's something that, again, I don't think I'm telling anyone anything they didn't know, but your phone's unlimited data plan isn't really unlimited. Neither is your internet at home. Neither is pretty much anything these days. And my question is, why then do we continue, and why are we allowed to use this type of terminology in marketing? When you say unlimited, and our definition of unlimited, and I should probably just pull this up on, like dictionary.com or something, but for the most part, unlimited to me would mean that there are no limits, right? So if we said we have an unlimited supply of air, that means that there is no limit to how much we can use, and we don't have to worry about running out, right? Same with water, same with energy, same with any resource or anything that you can think of. If it's unlimited, let's say that you have, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a good example here. to argue on the other side of that. You know, if you said that you're going to an all-you-can-eat buffet, right? Well, at least they're going to state the hours of operation on that menu. So you know if the lunch buffet, which is all-you-can-eat, goes from 11:30 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon, that means during that time period, you can eat as much as you're possibly able to, right? That makes sense. And I think everyone's clear on how that works. It doesn't mean that you can move in and live at the buffet indefinitely and eat as much as you want all the time, right? So they kind of define that for us. But these terms being thrown around in wireless are very confusing to people, and I know that I fell for it myself a long time ago, long time ago, when we had to pay for long distance for our home phones, and I bought an unlimited long distance plan from my carrier, only to find out after a month or two later it was actually limited to X number of minutes per month. So it was unlimited, and you have to read the fine print here. It's unlimited up to this point. So from 0 to 5,000, it's unlimited. Once you go beyond 5,000, then you are no longer within the unlimited area of that plan. So, you know, to me, this seems like you are purposely attempting to mislead the consumer. And that might just be me. But in any case, let's look at what carriers are doing, just so we have an idea, because most of us aren't using more than one carrier. Some are. But we're not always familiar with what's going on with these guys. Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, and Sprint all offer unlimited, I love how they put it in quotes, that's smart, data plans that suggest you can use as much high-speed data as you want each month, but the truth is much more complicated. Or, I'm sorry, the truth is more complicated. Is it? Is truth complicated? Because either, in my book, it's true or it's not true, and it shouldn't be that complicated to explain something if it's true. It would be more accurate, I think, to say that it's not really true, right? Can we pick one or the other and go with that? So we have truth with conditions on it nowadays, and here are the conditions that we're looking at. And I love the way that they advertise these. So Verizon, and I'm not going to pick on any one carrier. I'm just going to go through their plans so we can see what they offer. Verizon has 3 unlimited plans. So there are 3 different plans that are unlimited. One at 75, one at 85, one at 95 per month, respectively. So these are the names of the plans. Go Unlimited, Beyond Unlimited, and Above Unlimited. So if you want your limits to be, if you want your unlimited to end here, here, or here, I imagine, you pick one of the plans that are within those boundaries. And to me, this just seems like it would be more fair not to use the term unlimited, because people have a certain perception in mind when they hear that word. And we've had so many customers. We used to sell prepaid services out of our stores who advertise themselves as unlimited. And when the customer came back and said, hey, I was unlimited and suddenly my data shut off, or suddenly my data is throttled, and we had to explain to them, yes, that is how this plan works. After a while, we just kind of got into the habit of saying you have data of this amount, you have 4 gigabytes of data, and that's it. There's nothing unlimited about it. And in fact, in the near future, what we will probably be seeing are plans that are unlimited only in certain areas. So you may have unlimited browsing and unlimited, streaming music from a specific source. But if you go onto YouTube, or if you go onto Netflix, or if you go onto some other area, that will not be included in your unlimited plan. And this is a result of net neutrality going away. We have given carriers and ISPs permission to go ahead and pick and choose what we have limits on and what we don't. So not that we wanted that, but that's what happened. Now, if we move down here to AT&T, they have an unlimited and more. Well, that sounds good, right? I'd like to have unlimited plus more, but besides the unlimited. So how much more do I get than unlimited, and where does unlimited end would be my question. And unlimited and more premium. So if you really need a lot of data, you don't just want your data to be unlimited. You don't want it to be unlimited and more. You want it to be unlimited and more premium. I don't know what this means. And obviously the price varies with these different choices. Sprint has 2 unlimited plans. Unlimited Basic, which starts at $60 a month, and Unlimited Premium also for $70. What does that mean? Well, this is interesting, because with Sprint, unlimited plans are very limited, according to this article. This is CNBC. And it's weird the way they do this. So unlimited basic only supports 480p video, which is fine for some people, but others still, I think, would like to have 720p or above available, included in that unlimited package. 500 megabytes of LTE hotspot data, which strikes me as interesting because if you have a data connection and you're using a large amount of bandwidth, why would it matter if you're using your hotspot with that? Why does it matter that you're tethering your computer or your other device through your phone for data that you're already paying for? Why are they going to discriminate between one type of connection and another? I don't know the answer to that. Let's see, a modern 4G LTE connection should get you about 50 to 100 megabits per second, so you're getting 2% of the speed you pay for when you're playing video games and less for streaming music. So, Sprint will throttle your speeds if you exceed more than 50 gigabytes of data. I know most of us never go anywhere near that amount, but again, having that term unlimited, would certainly give you an impression, if you didn't know otherwise, as to what you might expect from your carrier, right? T-Mobile advertises unlimited talk, text, and data. So, we still got that term in there, unlimited. And then, of course, down here at the bottom, they have some restrictions. So if you dig into these, and by the way, folks, all the links, let's see, which side are we on? Okay, so all the links to this information that I'm talking about are down in the video description. I'm not making this up, and I wanted to make it easy for people to see this stuff for themselves and make your own decision, obviously. Now, down here at the very bottom, what they say in summary is that the good news is that most people don't use 22 gigabytes of data per month, and I have to agree with that. I certainly don't, not on my phone anyways. So it might feel like you're getting as much data as you can possibly use, and that's fine. If you want to say all the data that you can use up to 22 gigabytes a month, that's great. But when you say unlimited, you're giving people a certain impression, and I think that it's unfair. Services like Hulu, Netflix, and Spotify become more... I'm sorry. This is what I wanted to get to here. Now, the thing about this, unlimited, and when we say, well, 50 gigs, that is a ridiculous amount of data. No one is ever going to, no one who's not a data hog, if you want to call them that, is ever going to surpass that amount of data on their phone. And for the short term, that may be true, but I think the problem here is that if we look into the future and the direction that we're heading, and this is exactly what the article says at the bottom here, is that services like Hulu, Netflix, Spotify, we should include YouTube on there, especially for HD. As they become more and more popular and you use them more, that data will become consumed quicker. And we know that as the quality of streaming multimedia gets better and better, we are going to be using more bandwidth. So in the future, this is certainly going to have a lot more people saying, yes, I'm actually bumping up against that ceiling on my data plan. And I hope that by then we can convince carriers to say, well, here's what we're really selling, and get rid of this unlimited term, because it's misleading, it's not fair, and just because they've made a lot of assumptions about usage, it doesn't seem proper to completely change the definition of a term so that you can use that to your advantage for advertising. These are just my thoughts. I don't know what you guys think about this, but let's look at the comments, which we should already be on. You guys have to remind me. I keep forgetting to switch over here because when I go back and edit the video, all the comments disappear. YouTube hasn't offered us a feature yet that will allow us to keep the comments and for me to edit out the intro of the video, which is long and boring for most people who stumble upon it. So back to business here. Where were we? I missed a couple things here. Nate, hey Mike, do you have any comments on ordering from China? I just ordered almost $1,000 from Rewa, and my rep told me there's a possibility customs will interfere. I'll be a little mad if it doesn't come. Oh boy, I would be upset too. And man, Nate, I hate to say it, but there is a certain amount of risk involved when you order from China, and I would assume, and I don't order product direct from China generally speaking. We have distributors here in the US. You do have to pay a little more for it, but it offers quite a few benefits, as you can imagine. And God, let's see. Let me just cut to the chase here. Do I have any comments on ordering from China? Well, hope that you're dealing with an experienced and reputable vendor who knows how to get this stuff here. I have heard a lot about Rewa, and to the best of my knowledge, they are reputable. So I think the trust factor is there for them, unlike a lot of other companies out there. The bottom line is that, now that we have ICE, which I completely, when I saw ICE, ICE, I immediately thought immigration, because that's the first letter, that's what the first letter stands for. But the second letter in ICE stands for customs. So immigration and customs enforcement, now becoming more of a bigger thing than it was in the past, has certainly affected a lot of people. I remember, I want to say that someone else I saw actually made a video about how customs had seized their stuff. I have comments, and the comments are that if you're not saving a lot of money by buying from China right now, it's probably best to be cautious and maybe, stick with someone domestically who's already got the product here that you can order from, and hope that they don't file for bankruptcy or close their doors out of the blue while you have an order pending, because that sucks. But other than that, I don't have a lot of comments. I've talked to a few people who deal direct with China, who actually go out to China to buy their replacement parts. And one of the things that they said that was really tricky about that is that when you go to make, not so much getting the product from China to here, which now has become increasingly a challenge or more challenging, but getting that stuff back, if you have to return product, the way it was explained to me is it's very difficult to track product coming from the US back to the vendor in China and confirming that it was delivered. Now, I've since been told that there are ways to do that, but I believe it comes at a much more significant shipping cost. So, at a certain point, it's not really worth returning a small number of products. And if you return a lot of them, then obviously you're putting all your screens in one basket, so to speak. So if they get seized, then they're all gone. But if you don't have a way to confirm that they've been delivered, they may never end up getting back to the vendor that you purchased from. And it's always, depending on who you're dealing with, it's easy enough for them to say, well, we never got it, if you don't have a delivery confirmation of some sort. But I don't have a lot of advice for you, unless you really feel that it's going to be worth your time to order from China. And secondly, if you're buying stuff that has a logo on it, that's the big risk, or anything that's made to be OEM, anything that's for Apple for the most part, especially if it has a logo printed on it, even if that logo is printed on the Lightning port or the flex cable on the display. A lot of vendors now are covering that stuff up, and it's unfortunate they can't just make them without the logo, but I think that's going to be an ongoing concern. If I come up with any better advice, I'll certainly shoot it your way. Let's see. When you offer memory, yeah, let us know if you're going to do that memory. I was thinking about buying a NAND programmer recently for some data recovery projects, and if I had that, I might be able to upgrade the memory on some phones, but I think it would only be iPhone 6 and 6 Plus, so no one's really excited about that, right? Let's see. Here the local telco discontinued their unlimited, aka throttle the crap for after 15 gigabytes a month. Hey Greg, I took your advice and I've got the uBlock origin. If you look up here in the right hand corner of the browser, you can see it's already blocked 77 something on this website. So far so good. Thank you for the recommendation. Let's see. I just like telcos calling something G when it isn't. 5G when it isn't. Yeah, right. That's going to be an interesting one. And the whole issue with 5G, of course, is that the connection speed is going to be much faster, but the footprint is going to be much smaller. So we are probably, when we transition over to 5G, probably going to see some issues with coverage, because no one can really go out and just completely rebuild their network overnight to accommodate that. And at the same time, everyone is going to want to rush to be the first to offer 5G speed. So that will be an interesting one. Let's see. Problem is, I know some people who tether their cell phone for this internet service since they cannot get cable where they are in the boonies. And right, and if they're using that to tether it for whatever purposes, I don't understand why that should matter. If you're paying for a certain amount of bandwidth, a certain amount of data, even if there's a cap on it, why are you telling people that you can only use your phone for, you can only use up this 50 gigabytes for your phone. You can't tether your laptop or your Xbox or whatever else it is that you have. Why does that make any difference? It doesn't add up really. And I remember way back in the day when we had people on one particular network who always wanted to get their iPhones jailbroken so that they could tether their laptop to their carrier's data plan without the carrier knowing that they had a secondary device, because apparently that incurred an additional charge just because you were tethering your laptop, which, doesn't make sense to me. Technology Man, we have a question from a viewer here. Technology Man. Hi, can I replace the home button of an iPhone 7? Heard people saying it can't be done. Well, you can replace it, but you're not going to have much in the way of functionality, because as I understand it, and as far as my experience has shown, once you replace the button on the iPhone 7, it doesn't do anything after that except tell you that you cannot activate your Touch ID, and you won't be able to have the capacitive feature that works with the iPhone 7 home button unless you transfer a specific piece of hardware known as the U10 or Turtle IC from the original home button over to the flex cable on the new button, which must be a functional button. And coincidentally, I got this tool recently. Oh, let me grab it. Folks, give me 1 second. I want to show you something. So I bought this recently, and my plan was specifically to make a video to demonstrate how to. This is the G-Lon. Oh, that's not going to work, is it? Let's get something. Oh boy, how am I going to do this? Can I put it on my hand? No, it's still going to do that. Okay, so anyways, you'll have to use your imagination. There we go. Get it close enough to the camera. So I bought this thing, the G-Lon tool, for removing that integrated circuit that I mentioned from the iPhone 7. And I'm going to contact them again because, long story short, I didn't find that this was able, for whatever reasons, and it could be my equipment. So I'm not saying that this isn't a good product. I'm just saying that so far I haven't been able to get it to work properly because it did not generate enough heat here in order to remove that circuit from, or that IC from the flex cable. Now, that being said, and I went like 100 degrees Celsius higher than what they said that you should have to do to make it happen. So I'm confident I had plenty of heat on there. I'd removed all that silicone stuff from around it, and it just wouldn't melt the solder. Now, again, that could be my soldering station. I don't know, but I'm fairly confident that that thing is working properly. However, I was able to remove it with hot air, and I transferred it over to another iPhone 7 home button that I bought online, which looked terrible under the microscope. Like, the soldering was all jacked up. It was missing some pieces. So I think your biggest challenge there is not transferring that IC from the original home button flex cable over to the new one. It's finding a usable home button that will actually function. And of course, you will not have that Touch ID no matter what, unless you can somehow, unless the damage on the home button is on the end of the flex cable where it plugs into the pop connector, because in that case you can actually cut off the end of that cable. And this channel, G-Lon, has a tutorial video that shows you exactly that. He cuts the cable off of the home button, takes one from another, and solders all those little connectors together, puts it back on, and you have functional everything. So that would be the only way you could really do it and make it happen. Make it be anything more than cosmetic, to the best of my knowledge. Hope that was probably more of an explanation that you needed, but you happen to remind me of that. I was actually kind of experimenting around with that stuff because, as you can imagine, plenty of people coming in with iPhone 7 home buttons that don't have Touch ID anymore, and usually not a lot that we can do for that, unfortunately. Everything on this order was for Galaxy only, a few LCDs and a bunch of back panels. Okay, did they have Samsung printed on them would be my main concern, because if they don't, you shouldn't have anything to worry about. And if they do, then you're still kind of in that same category of, trademarked parts, which they typically will try to seize and I believe destroy is ultimately what happens to them. If not, you should be good. I have the solution. Send the China products to Mexico and go with Mike on a road trip. There you go. Yeah, we should start seeing more manufacturing closer to... we should be making this stuff here, right? Isn't that the idea? We'll see. Road trip to Mexico kind of sounds fun. Heard if you use original home button, it will work, but Touch ID won't work. And that is probably... It'd be easy enough to swap it out and test. In fact, maybe I will test that one because I have two phones fitting that description. I have an iPhone 7 with a working home button and one with a home button that doesn't do anything. So maybe I'll swap my home button into that one and see what happens. If I do, I will certainly make a video about it, and then we'll have a definitive answer right here. Yes, they had it printed. Yeah, so unfortunately, I believe, Nate, that they're concentrating on Apple more so, but if something comes through with Samsung, I mean, they are going to be the second largest here in the US. So cross your fingers, keep us posted, let us know what happened. But hopefully you'll slip through. $1,000 order shouldn't be that big of a deal. I think when they're looking at huge quantities coming through, that's when they're probably more prone to be inspected. And maybe there's some randomness to it. Maybe they just start popping boxes open here and there. So hopefully you'll get through okay. But yeah, always a concern, man. And it's ridiculous that we have to do business this way in the US. We should have legitimate sources for compatible parts. Let's talk about right to repair. It should be down here in just a minute. But yeah, we should have something by now that says that manufacturers can't block us from buying replacement parts if we know what we're doing, right? Seems simple enough. But greed has no limits, it seems. All right, next up, a Microsoft branded, I almost said iPhone, a Microsoft branded Android phone could be on the way. Don't hold your breath, but it's possible. So there is a chat here between someone and someone else. Let's see, who are these people? We're talking about an agent who wanted to remain anonymous. I imagine someone with Microsoft who said specifically that they were working on a new line of phones which will be powered by Android, which would make sense because Windows coming back on phones seems like highly unlikely. And this is part of the conversation, and it's kind of difficult to see here. Maybe we can blow this up a little bit to where it's viewable. Can we? Nope, that's not helping. All right. In any case, it won't run. I'm trying to read this here. It says it won't run Windows 10 mobile. And then the response is, it's like a new addition for Microsoft phones. It's going to be powered by Android, that's for sure. And then the other person in this conversation says, Are you sure? I'm a journalist, and I represent leading publications. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Are you sure? Because I'm a journalist. Okay. Yes, I'm sure, but as I mentioned, they're not posting any official updates yet. So we need to wait for the progress. Okay. Last thing, is that phone going to be Microsoft branded? Yes, definitely. It's going to be under our wing. So according to a chat conversation, it happened between two random people that we don't know. They're saying that Microsoft may make an Android phone, which will be interesting. And I guess my question is why, really? Seems like we have plenty of Android manufacturers, and at the same time, we don't have a lot of competition really here in the US. So maybe Microsoft could make that a new thing. Maybe they could go up against Samsung. It's possible. Don't count on it, the article goes on to say, and I wouldn't be surprised. We're not convinced a customer service agent. I got to tell you, folks, I struggle with reading, but a lot of the writing nowadays is tricky. It's like they're not using spell check on these things. As we're not convinced an customer service agent, let's call that a customer service agent, would have this kind of inside information unless the launch was imminent. So we're not sure unless we're sure, is what it sounds like. And if it was, this probably wouldn't be the first we're hearing about it. So what do you think? Can Microsoft make a comeback? I'm skeptical about this one. Let's see. So Nate, you heard they had the logos printed. In my experience, neither function on the button will work. The only way to fix one that I'm aware of is going to Apple for a screen repair. They will always be able to repair it. I'm going to give that a shot, guys. I think you're right, Nate. At least that's the way I remember it. You won't get any functionality unless you transfer over that U10 IC from the original board that it was paired with. Well, from the cable that was paired to the board of that same phone. So that's the way that I understand it. I'm going to have to try it now just to find out. But I'm pretty sure Nate's right on this one. And he says in his experience, so if this is something that's happening firsthand, then yeah, I'm going to say good luck on that one. Apple's really got that thing locked down, unfortunately. All 2018 iPhones and 2 new iPads will get the iPhone X's most controversial feature. Is this a controversial feature? I guess it is. So look forward to seeing a notch on the iPads because Face ID is the big thing nowadays. And that's it does go on to say a little bit about the 3 iPhone models, which I'm sure all of you have heard about quite a bit by now, but it looks like let's see, how do they phrase it here? Suppliers of 3D sensors that make Face ID will see a bright second half of the year thanks to robust demand for 3D sensors. Says that 3 iPhones and 2 new iPad versions are supposed to be released in 2018, late third quarter. All should support Face ID, which would drive up the demand for key components. That makes sense. And the 3 iPhones that we're talking about here are an affordable 6.1-inch LCD model, a 5.8-inch iPhone 10 successor, and of course, a second OLED, the iPhone 10 Plus with a 6.5-inch screen. And okay, that's great. I don't have a problem with that. The funny thing is that, we've kind of wondered for a while. We've got the notches on the phones, and enough people accepted it that it seemed to be a good decision, I guess, to the extent that a lot of Android manufacturers kind of jumped on that bandwagon and started building notches in. And we've already got like the next gen of phones that have completely done away with the notch, but still have the functionality that the notch offers, which is Face ID and a front-facing camera of some sort. So to see this on other Apple devices, not a huge surprise. I was kind of, I just kind of thought it was going to be iPads next. And I wonder if we're far away from having MacBooks that are going to have notches built into the display. Personally, I find it distracting, but I am not the majority of people. So I guess if that's the thing to do, then I don't know. The whole Face ID thing, I believe, and this is from a very small sample of customers and friends and people that I've talked to who use phones. But it seems like a lot of iPhone users specifically are kind of sad to have seen Touch ID go. That they kind of prefer to be able to just touch the phone, have it unlock, instead of having to hold it at a specific angle right in front of your face. And while I don't use either of those features myself, I am sold on the idea that if I was to have a Touch ID or anything to unlock my phone automatically, it would probably either be my voice, like maybe tell the phone to wake up, or to build something like a Touch ID sensor into one of the side buttons, or maybe both of the side buttons, maybe on the left and the right, so that if you're left-handed or right-handed, it doesn't matter where your thumb is. Or maybe it reads your index finger on one side and your thumbprint on the other side. To me, that makes sense, because typically when I'm picking up the phone, I'm going to be holding it, in a position where one of my fingers is close to the volume buttons. To me, that makes sense, rather than stretching over to the awkward home button position, or maybe putting your phone, putting your finger on the screen. That's just me. But there are a couple of phones out there that are already doing that. So we'll see how that goes over. And I have to say, sadly enough, if Apple isn't doing it, I don't think it's going to fly at this point. I mean, this is really the way that things are going. I am not, I don't think I'd describe myself as a fanboy of any operating system, manufacturer, or product. But it's hard to argue that Apple is selling the most handsets, overall, at least within the US. So we have to kind of look at the numbers and how people are responding. And, for the most part, my theory is that comes down to a number of factors, ease of use, not having to think a lot about your actions, just having something do what you want it to, when you want it to. And of course, there's that whole thing about having the same product that everyone else has. And once you've gone past 50% market share, now the majority of customers are on your operating system and are utilizing features that are consistent within that ecosystem. So if you're the one person that doesn't have it, then you're kind of left out without iMessaging or without whatever it is, without the animated emojis that are compatible with this particular model. So I believe, whether we like it or not, this appears to be the future for the most part. So it's unfortunate, but it seems like it's becoming more and more rare for anyone to take any risks, any chances, and instead have decided to just follow Apple when it comes to handset design. So for whatever it's worth, I believe this is what we have to expect in the future. On a car phone mount, Touch ID is a must. That's a good point, Harvey. Good call there. And I would argue that wireless charging should be too, and so should something called hands-free Siri, which Apple is now talking about building into the EarPods for 2019, which I think should have really, should be something that any Bluetooth device that is connected to any kind of voice assistant really should have that feature already, right? Shouldn't you, no matter what you're connecting to, your Android, your iPhone, your Alexa, whatever it is, if it accepts voice commands, it seems like a voice command should be an easy, reliable, fast way to unlock your device or to activate, any of those features that you use. I think if you're using earpods, for example, you shouldn't have to put your hand on your ear, your hand on your phone in order to get Siri to do whatever it is that you want her to do, right? You want to play in the next song, maybe Siri, play the next song. That seems like it should happen, shouldn't it? That's just my philosophy. Apple got to invest. Oh, and one other thing that I can't figure out. Siri will open my camera, but she won't take a picture, and she won't start recording video. And to me, that seems like it would be the most useful part of having Siri integrate with the camera system on your iPhone or your iPad or whatever it is to say that, okay, I've got the thing sitting on a tripod. We're all getting ready to pose for a picture, or you're going to take a selfie or whatever it is, or I'm going to start recording a video and I have a camera set up, and you just say, Siri, start recording video. She doesn't do that. She opens the camera. That's it. And then you have to go manually press buttons. I don't get that. But from what we've seen from a lot of manufacturers, including Apple, it would make sense to have that capability, but not release it until a new operating system or until a new phone model comes out and you want to encourage people to update or upgrade. So that's not totally unexpected. So Apple got to invest into AI to prevent what, Johnny? Apple got to invest into AI to prevent the Judgment Day from Terminator. Yeah, I think we need to. Skynet will be as bugged and as iOS and iDevices. That's probably the one thing we don't have to worry about with AI taking over the world just yet. There's probably going to be a lot of bugs in there, right? But as I put the quote, I love this quote in the beginning of the video. If you didn't already see it, it's Steve Wozniak, and he says pretty much, never trust a computer that you can't throw out a window. And I kind of agree with that. If it's built into one of those Boston Dynamic robots and it's artificial intelligence and it has the strength of like 10 people, that I would be concerned with. That would be a little scarier than a computer that's sitting on your desktop, right? Siri is total garbage in Nate's opinion. That's the other reason I will be going back to Android soon. I have to use Google Apps on my iPhone so it will work properly. And I have to agree with you, Nate. I think that this is a huge potential for improvement with Apple is Siri. Like, they've done a lot of other stuff well. Siri has not really been a shining example of what a voice assistant should be able to do. So hopefully we'll see some improvements there. And I got to tell you, I had this conversation recently. I am really missing my Galaxy S6. I'm using the iPhone 8, and I'm missing a lot of the features that I had in my Galaxy S6. So much so that I'm thinking of fixing the screen and going back to that. The only thing that I regret is that I bought a carrier branded model, and so it automatically updates the operating system. Like, you don't have the option of changing that. I still don't think that they've cracked the bootloader on that thing, so there's not a lot of choices there. And the replacement cost of the screen almost meets the total value of the phone. It is a 64 gig. Woohoo! Back then that was a lot of storage. But I do miss having my infrared blaster. Man, I can't tell you how many times I lost the control, my remote control, and I go, oh, I'll just use my phone. No, I won't. That doesn't work, unfortunately. Just accept that our robotic overlords will rule over us very soon. Harvey, we can't give up, man. We got to fight this fight. We want robots telling us what to do. I wonder, and this is a serious question, when we look at things like, the whole iRobot deal, right? And we've had this conversation many times. I think we need to do an entire live stream just about artificial intelligence. But, writing the rules for AI. Okay, if we do just say, hey, it's inevitable, they're going to take over, they'll be in charge, they'll be smarter than us. All right. Where does the philosophy of how they rule and govern us or themselves or the world or anything else, where is that going to come from? And how can we possibly address all of the potential problems that we could have with that? If you were to tell a machine that its purpose is to replicate, or its purpose is to improve life for humans, or its purpose is to whatever its mission is going to be, and it doesn't have that human element to interpret how that would impact other parts of our lives, or our existence, that's where I think it gets kind of sketchy. Because if ultimately AI decides that humans are just kind of in the way and it could evolve further, or that humans are in their own way, or that certain members of society are the ones that need to be eliminated or incarcerated or whatever else. Where does their philosophy come from? How do they figure that out? And how does that conflict with the way that we think that the world should operate? And how does each culture, from one culture to the next, priorities are different, right? If we looked at something in the US and then we looked at Taiwan, and then we looked at Iceland, and we looked at all these different areas, we're not in total agreement as to how we prioritize different issues and different people and different positions, and all these things have to come together somehow. I'm wondering how that's going to turn out. Siri is a heuristic algorithm instead of an AI. What about a supercomputer to replace our useless politicians in Washington, D.C.? No comment. Remember the Navigator AI from Wall-E? I actually haven't seen that movie. A lot of people talk about it. I'm going to have to put that on my list. I have a question, and I'm not going to become partisan. I hate to do that because I prefer that people take all the information available to them and make their own choices. So I think we have enough people, fighting on one side or the other. It would be nice to see a politician who united our population instead of dividing it. And I'm not talking specifically about the current administration. I'm talking about, as far back as I can remember, it's always been one versus the other. And it's rare to have anyone in power whose mission is to unite a nation, which is what we are supposed to be here, United States, right? And typically that, historically that hasn't been what's happened for a long time. That being said, I think it's fair, and I didn't come up with this idea, but for a long time, I've been thinking about this, and it makes sense. And I heard it on a podcast expressed far more eloquently than I could do it. But it certainly seems that representative government in the United States and probably in many other countries is due for an overhaul. We don't need two people from each state. We have senators. We have two people. And if you take something like California with a population of millions, and we have two people that go to Washington to represent us and tell Washington what we think and how we want to vote. And we have an electoral college, which was developed basically to keep a third party out of government a long time ago. But the whole idea of representative government was based on technology that is hundreds of years old. So when we were spread out across the country, and there were no telephones, there was no internet, there was no broadcasting. It was just word of mouth and people riding on horses for the most part, until the first vehicles became available. That made sense to have someone to represent our state or our county or our local area, whatever it is, to travel to Washington, D.C. and to say that, hey, the people where I live want this, and I'm here to represent them, to pass this information on and to put my vote into the hat or whatever it is and say, here's what we want back home. We don't need that anymore. We don't have to have 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 people representing us. We have instantaneous communication. We have ways to connect directly to anywhere in the world and say, hey, I would like to vote in favor of this, or I would like to vote opposed to that. Why do we have to have such a small number of people making the decisions, on top of the fact that their decisions are so heavily influenced by special interest groups, who can contribute ridiculous amounts of money to their campaigns and say, hey, by the way, remember, we want this when you get into office. It blows my mind. All right, close the politics topic for a minute here. Let's see. Sorry, let me back up, folks. I missed out on a comment here. Second the motion to replace all politicians. Replace them with YouTube polls. Hey, that would work. Just don't replace them with YouTube comments because those get out of hand. Hopefully not a united authoritative state. Imagine AI customized for a market like India, where the cow reigns supreme, but the people from feudal villages and lower castes lie low in priority. Is the AI car has to avoid the cow or the low caste? Yeah, and that's exactly the kind of thing that raises so many questions here, where it's going to be very difficult to come up with an AI, like a worldwide AI, right? Because everyone believes differently in different types of the world. The YouTube trolls will take over. That is for sure. Person as an obstacle who will hit and choose based on its programming, will it? But the people. Okay, yeah, so we're talking about the AI driver. Okay, so let me get to these real quick. ZTE is back, it looks like, maybe. Investors on Monday cheered The lifting of a U.S. supplier ban on China's ZTE Corporation, pushing its shares up 17%. Probably was a good time to buy ZTE when it was down, right? Does that mean that they're going to be back? I don't know. Nowadays, it's so hard to tell. It's like, hey, you guys broke the rules, you're out. Okay, we'll let you back in. Oh, you broke them a second time? Now you're out for good. But if you pay these fines, you get to come back. So, how do we know what's going to happen? The Chinese company deposited $400 million into an escrow account as part of a settlement reached last month. The settlement also included a $1 billion penalty paid to the U.S. Treasury in June. So, I guess if you got the money, anything is possible. Now, at the same time, obviously ZTE will have to work hard to find substitutes to its U.S. suppliers such as Avnet, Qualcomm, and Broadcom. And it says here to reduce reliance. Now, I thought that these companies were done doing business with ZTE, but if I'm interpreting this correctly, it means that since the ban is over, they will be able to start selling to ZTE again, of course, barring any other crazy Chinese tariffs that we may see emerge in the near future. And that's a whole topic unto itself, right? So this is actually good news for U.S. chip manufacturers who will now have one more company that they can sell their products to. Obviously, it's going to be a challenge to overcome the skepticisms that customers have, knowing that a company that you are buying your phone from might be banned again or out of business or who knows what else is going on, but it certainly has a less than perfect track record here in the U.S. And of course, and this is Jefferies analyst Edison Lee says he expects ZTE to go to each of its non-Chinese telecommunications customers and offer incentives of varying degrees to compensate for their hardship and reward their patience and loyalty. I'm not sure exactly what that means. And at the same time, many U.S. lawmakers see ZTE as a national security threat. And on Thursday, a group of Republican and Democratic U.S. senators urged ZTE's penalties be reinstated. So I don't know what all this means. Maybe ZTE's coming back. Maybe it won't. Nowadays it's so hard to tell because we get this on again, off again. Okay, I'm kicking you guys out. Now we're friends. I don't know. It's unfortunate though because ZTE certainly had found a niche here in the U.S. where they had low dollar handsets, a lot of them with large displays, which people want. They didn't want to spend a lot of money. They wanted to have a big screen. Great, but when the who is this here? Which organization is this? I lost it. Who was it who was telling us not to trust them? Anyways, government agencies were saying that we cannot trust ZTE. Where'd they go? I just lost it. In any case, I think the real question here is, can ZTE get back into carrier stores? Because that is going to be what makes or breaks them. And for the most part, I believe they were only doing business with Metro and possibly T-Mobile, maybe AT&T, a handset or two, but there certainly weren't a lot outside of the Metro's markets, which is now T-Mobile. So, but branded as Metro, right? Why don't smartphone makers use Tegra SoCs from NVIDIA? They are manufactured in Taiwan, and I think they can get around export bans. I don't know, Johnny. But Harvey said, China has a heavy hand on Taiwan. Since Taiwan isn't viewed as a state or country, they have very little export powers. And I know there's still kind of an ongoing, what do you want to call it? Taiwan's kind of in limbo, right? Because they believe that they are their own sovereign nation, but China doesn't technically really accept that, if I'm correct. I don't know that much about it, but I know there's kind of a thing where it's like, it's Taiwan, it's separate, but China believes that Taiwan should be part of China, something along those lines. And correct me if I have that wrong, but that's the way I understand it. Twitter bots getting purged. This is fun. I wonder if I lost any followers on this one. So if you didn't already know this, there's all sorts of crazy stuff going on. Facebook, Twitter, everywhere else where we have outside forces and automated software pretty much, spreading information or misinformation and influencing people's behavior and decisions because they think that a bunch of people think something and it ends up a lot of this stuff is fake. Well, millions of followers disappeared from Twitter accounts last week. This includes among them Katy Perry, who lost 2 million. So Katy Perry, a pop music performer, had 2 million fake Twitter account followers. Why? I don't know why. Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey lost 200,000 and Wheat Thins lost 12,000. Donald Trump himself lost 1 million Twitter followers. So obviously, with some of these, there's an angle. In other cases, who knows? Maybe it's just some randomness. But I think overall, this is a good thing. Now, should this be a legal requirement? That's the real question here. Because Twitter, as far as I can tell, did this voluntarily. They went through and said, hey, we need to get rid of all of these fake unverified accounts or things that we suspect are actually bots, which is good overall because we're not going to see people who we think are saying things and it's actually, you've got 200,000 bots out there that all say the same thing, but they're all owned by the same interest for the most part. So it's cool that they're doing something about this. And at the same time, do we really want, do we want this to be a requirement? Do we want government to step in and say that if you operate a social media platform, then we are going to make sure, or you need to police that platform, kind of like what we're seeing with Facebook, right? So did Facebook break the law? Did they bend the rules, by sharing this information with this analytics company? And is it their responsibility to be transparent about that? And what kind of laws are going to go on the books in the future? I don't know, but it certainly seems like we will see something like that appear because if this is any indication, and I think that Twitter is doing the right thing by preemptively saying, okay, we are going to clean up our system because, one, credibility I think would be an issue, but secondly, it's crazy how some ideas can go viral or be presented as going viral when in fact maybe they really aren't, but people see it that way. And we see this with the fake news stuff. If you get your news from Facebook, be very skeptical about that information for the most part. So it sounds like it's a good idea. But Obama and Hillary lost quite a few also. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I was looking at that earlier, and I want to say that Obama lost a ton. I don't think it's in this article. I'd have to look it up. These accounts weren't real people to begin with, so no brand or influencer's real engagement will be affected. Is that true? Okay, here's another question for you. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing that this happened, but my question is this. If you have propelled yourself or your account or your exposure in some way by using these fake accounts, then when those fake accounts disappear, will that not affect your real engagement? When people look at accounts, if they don't have as many real followers, I assume that what they're saying is that Twitter knows who has a number of real followers. Now that they've cleaned out the bots, it won't affect anything. That would lead me to believe that they already knew that the bots existed beforehand. But at the same time, if you look at something like YouTube, for example, just by virtue of a channel having a lot of subscribers or a lot of views, that will increase their organic search results. So I don't know if the same is true for Twitter, but one would think so, right? So why then would you be deleting these fake accounts if it didn't have anything to do with their real engagement or their exposure at the very least? So I guess what they're saying is, as far as real engagement, it isn't affected, but I still question whether or not how something ranks was being influenced by the number of interactions that it had with anything, whether it's a real entity or not, whether it's a bot or a real person or whatever it is. Marketers said they hoped Instagram would do more to purge its own bots to prevent fraud. Sounds like a good idea, right? So good for Twitter. And, do we need laws to come in, to step in and say, hey, you guys need to clean up your act and get rid of those fake followers? I don't know. It's a good question. Depends on if you have multiple personality. What about verified accounts? I would assume that those are okay, Johnny. And in fact, I probably should look into that. I don't, a little blue check mark thing, right? Is that what we're talking about? I don't know. I think that those are safe. If you have the little check mark there on your account, you're probably okay. When the social media became the cybernetic society. Could be a bad thing if they claim real accounts are fake and delete real people to influence people's thoughts on what's really going on. It's good call, Nate. Yeah, that's a good question too. How they're going about determining who's real and who's not. I don't know the answer to that. But before we sign off, look at these. Tell me what you think, guys. So as I mentioned earlier, they're talking about having a new design for the AirPods in 2019. Well, new features anyways. And I got to tell you, personally, this is just my personal opinion. I cannot get used to the way these things look. And they may sound great. I haven't tried a pair. But every time I see someone wearing them, it discourages me from first of all, the price point. What are these things, like $150 or something? They're going to be going for $159, the new generation, which is supposed to support Siri, hands-free Siri, which is a good move, I think. And no, we're not just going to upgrade the software on your phone to include that feature. You can buy a new pair of headphones. Well, that makes sense. They're supposed to have a better water resistance rating than the original AirPods. But again, I got to say, I am stuck on the look of these things. When I see people wearing earpods, I haven't got used to it yet. That's how I would phrase it. And I think it's because they're so noticeable, because you have this big bar hanging down out of your ear. And then for a second, I thought, well, why don't they just make them flesh colored? And then I thought quickly, wow, you could not possibly create anything and call it flesh color, right? You go to jail if you did that, because obviously there is no one consistent flesh colored anything. But you could maybe make them transparent. I don't know. They're just so noticeable and distracting to me when I see somebody wearing these things. I just haven't gotten used to it yet. Maybe if everyone was wearing earpods, it would be just like, normal, everyday, whatever. But so far, I can't get over it. They just look odd to me. Also, they're going to be coming out with a new HomePod. And interesting, we don't hear much about the HomePod. Have you noticed that? I'm wondering how well that went over. I have a feeling that there was a lot of competition, with Google Home and with Alexa and everything else. I don't suspect that the HomePod did all that well, comparatively speaking. But there's certainly a limit to how many different things you can branch out into. And Apple's got the phone, tablet, and laptop or MacBook market, so that may be the extent of it. And of course, there's a question as to whether these aren't, somewhat cannibalizing their own market, since they've got the Beats line now for sale. Haha, you racist, flesh colored. I know, that's exactly what went through my mind, and forgive me, folks, I come from a past where they seriously had something that was called, I want to say, the Crayolas I grew up when I was a kid, which now would be banned, right? But I remember in like kindergarten having Crayolas that had a flesh color, and you can imagine the problem with that, right? There's no flesh color, first of all. And if you were to say black, white, brown, any other color, no one is truly that. There aren't any white people. There aren't any black people. Everyone has a different shade of skin color or whatever, but there's certainly no term flesh that fits every description. So we need to not do that, right? So I'm going with maybe transparent earpods just so they don't stick out so much. But yeah, that's dating myself. I know. All I can say is I assure you I'm not racist, but the terminology can cause some problems because you get used to hearing things a certain way, and when it changes, you have to update. You have to stay politically correct and stay up with the times. So that is what it is. Mike, just glue your laces to the ends of the AirPods. That's a good one. Tartar sauce filet color. Yeah, that would work too. Tartar sauce filet. Yeah, I'm just gonna go with, why don't we make peach, different shades of brown, maybe some, I don't know how you could do it, but just the big white things sticking down out of people's ears. I always do a double take. I'm like, are you wearing earrings? What is that? Is something dripping? I just think the design's kind of funny, and I don't know why. I guess it's to keep them from falling out, but it seems like there's room for improvement in the form factor. Now, I've been told the performance, the sound, everything's great about them, and they're going to be coming out with a better water resistant rating. It's not going to be as good as the iPhone itself, so you don't want to take these swimming. And I would imagine they'd fall out of your ears at some point too, right? But I predict a change in the design of these things, because they just, I don't know, seems like they could come up with something better. All that research and development money they have, let's do it. All right, guys, thanks for joining me. Again, I am going to sign off, and I'll be back this Thursday evening, 6 p.m. Next Monday, 2 p.m. in the afternoon, I am getting some how-to videos published, I promise you. In fact, I've got one ready to go. It's going to publish tomorrow, and I've got a number of projects I'm working on my desk. I've had a lot of people saying, hey, how about some more how-to stuff? So I'm going to be focusing more on that, and I've actually got my equipment somewhat squared away so that I can do more of those videos. So that's what we'll be looking forward to. You get in trouble when you associate more colors with fruits available to make it more ambiguous, as with apples. There you go. Yeah, I don't know what the answer is. You have to be careful even when you describe something nowadays, because a lot of people have become sensitive about the language. So that's what it is. So it's all good. We certainly don't want to make anyone feel bad. That's the crazy thing about it. I believe that most of the offensive language that we hear today, there's certainly some people who do it in a hateful manner. That there's no questioning that. But I think there's a lot of people who are looking for something to be offended by at the same time. So it's really a matter of balancing those two things, right? You don't want people to feel bad, but sometimes we take things a little far. I think, whatever. That's just my opinion. Hey, thanks for watching. I will catch you all next time. I'll be in the chat for the next few minutes, and have a great week.